about Wahoo and dolphin fishing, and as a general whole this summer has been one of the best offshore seasons we've had in a long, long time. Back about 4 weeks ago or so, I had done one of our regular fishing reports on Facebook and online and stuff, and I was talking about swordfish in that particular one. But in that one particular week, I could account for 27 swordfish that had been caught that week. And I can remember years when we didn't hardly catch 37 or 27 swordfish in an entire year. So it's been that kind of year all along. And it's been the same thing with the marlin fishing, with the wahoo fishing, with the dolphin fishing. It's been very good. The one thing that's made it a little bit more difficult on the dolphin fishing side anyway is there hasn't been a tremendous amount of weed lines offshore. It's been more temperature breaks, color changes. You know, and the sargasso weed, it's a naturally occurring phenomenon, and some years we have a lot, some years we don't have a lot at all. And this has been one of those years when there hasn't been a lot of sargasso weed, so you really do have to pay attention to your temperature charts to find out where to go. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit. But I just wanted to start off with tackle. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on rods and reels. This is because we've covered this quite a bit, but it's fairly simple. Well, you know, rods and reels, we want something that's in the 30 to 80 pound kind of class range of rods and reels. You need something that's going to hold at least 300 to 500 yards of 60-pound test. Something that you might use for grouper fishing and amberjack fishing, the Shimano Talica 25, it'll do a fine job. Back in the old days, we used to sell a tremendous amount of Shimano Tiagras in 80 class reels and 50 class reels. In the 50s and the 30s have the exact same drag system in. There's no difference. And in the old days, we didn't have braid. So now that we have, with the advent of braid, we've been able to lighten up our tackle a lot. There was a time when I probably sold, 60 80s a year, probably sold 150 reels, and I only sold about 20 30s. That's almost completely flip-flop now, to the point where I only sell 4 to 8 80 class reels a year, maybe 20 50s, and everything else is 30. Because I can take this 30, which this particular reel is. This reel has 500 yards of 80-pound braid, top shotted with 150 yards of 60 mono, and then still have room for a wind-on leader. And the reason, and people ask, well, why don't we just fish all braid if braid is that great? Well, braid is great, but it has a few little issues. One is braid doesn't have any stretch to it, so there's no room for angler error. Well, by having this 150-yard top shot in here mono, I don't have to worry about that. That's my stretch point. So it acts kind of like a rubber band, and I don't either pull fish off or break fish off. And then the most important part of that little piece is, also the reason everybody asks, well, why do we use, if you got 80 braid, why do you put 60 mono? Well, the braid to fill this reel is going to be $100. If it's going to fail, we want it to fail at the connection, where the 60 mono is connected to the braid. That way, worst case scenario, we lose the top shot. That costs $12 to replace. We don't lose all the braid. And then the place where we're most likely to lose a fish is right at the boat. So, what I've done is put a 200-pound, what we call a wind-on leader on here. So, from the tip of the rod right now to that boat, that's 200-pound test. So I can be fishing in the strike position, catching my fish, and then once I tied a double line. Yes, sir.
What knot do you use from the 200 down to your 80?
Okay. So, question was, what knot do I use? The wind-on leader is going to come with a braided with a loop in it, so I need to get a double line into the 60. Most people will still tie a bimini knot. I use an Australian braid. You can come up here and look at this after the show. Take the line off to it. The Australian braid, done correctly, is about 100, right at 100% knot. A bimini, done correctly, is 100. But it's real hard, and even for myself, I would say more than 70% of the time when I do a bimini, when I pull it tight enough to make it spin back on itself, I damage the main line. And at that point, that knot is severely weakened. The Australian braid won't do that. But when I'm fighting my fish, see, I'm here in the strike position, and the strike position on your reel should be set at about a quarter of the line's breaking strength. Well, once I get about 3 or 4 wraps or so of this 200-pound wind on leader, I can just take this and shove it to full now. And now I just went, so if I had 60-pound test, I had a quarter of the line's breaking strength, I'm at 15, I go to full, now I'm at about 22 pounds of drag. And I'm telling you, 22 pounds of drag, so should have closed the snap for it. I can almost pull you out of a chair with 22 pounds of drag. You guys, all the time you read in magazines, the reel companies are touting, well, our reels get 50 pounds of drag. Well, I'm telling you, the 50 pounds of drag, or 32 pounds is what we normally set our 80s at. If it's in the rod holder, and I have an angler in a fighting chair, and I have a blue marlin screaming off the line, it's everything I can do to get it out of the rod holder, inch my way across the deck, stick it in the chair and get him clipped in. You just can't physically fish without a strap. So, that's a little bit about our rods and reels. Now, where and when do we catch wahoos and dolphins? Like I say, right now it's about all the offshore species. It's about tunas right now, it's about marlin, it's about swordfish. But we have some really unique features right here in Destin that make our offshore fishing one of the premier destinations on the Gulf of Mexico. From the past, just offshore, there's 3 major breaks that are all in that average around 25-mile range. And that's kind of where we start. I don't feel like I've really gone wahoo fishing until I've gone 25 miles. Now, that's not to say that the charter boats, you'll see the party boats regularly coming home with a wahoo every day. One of the 4 or 5 charter party boats in town catch a wahoo almost every day. And they're trolling well inside this 25-mile range. And the wahoos will come very, very close. But I don't think I can go and target those. That's just kind of bycatch. But they throw 2 lures out, dragging 12 knots everywhere they go. And they catch a fair amount of wahoos that way. But just offshore the edges out here, we have what's called Mingo Ridge, the south edge, and the southwest edge. And that's where the continental shelf actually broke millions of years ago. And these are, at one time, were just sharp edges. And they've kind of crumbled away a little bit now, but it's still, it goes from about 165 to 185 feet real quick. And then just offshore of that, we have the steps off the Pensacola. We have the nipple right in here. We have the 131 hole. And we have the spur. And actually, I have the spur gone upside down. Just realize that. But the spur is the mouth of the DeSoto Canyon. And that's where the Gulf Stream originates. It goes all the way up the East Coast and all the way to Europe. And this starting sometime in April, most of us are keyed in on cobia fishing at that time of year, but the wahoos actually start to show up in April. And just offshore of the spur, where Gulf Stream is originating, we get eddies that break off and roll up onto these edges. And that creates an upwelling from the bottom, which in turn brings nutrients up to the surface. When we get nutrient-rich waters, we got 1 million little fish this size. And we got 1 million fish this size, we got a little bigger fish, and a little bigger fish. And we get bait fish concentrations on these edges, and then that's where we start to catch our wahoos and dolphin at. Now, if you're going to do this on any kind of regular basis, we know that fuel costs are one of our biggest expenditures. So knowing where to fish, we got all these places, but there's several, they're 20, 30, 40, 50 miles apart. How do we find the places? And I'm going to do a little thing. Yeah. Inside the cover, you'll see some colored pictures down here in the bottom corner. And what these pictures are, there's several sites out there that do this, but the best ones for our areas, Hilton's Offshore, Ross, and Fishman are the best. You can subscribe to these services. All this information is actually free on the internet. I can go find it all. But it takes me hours I got to go to the Rutgers site and get the chlorophyll. I got to go to University of Colorado and get this temperature shot. And I can get all these different images and then take them and overlay them into Google Earth and get this information for free. But it takes me, like I say, a couple hours each time I want to do that. Well, these particular websites, you can get a one-time image. They normally run about $75 to $95, or you can subscribe to the service for the year. Most of them run around $600 or $700. But Todd was telling the story earlier about this one customer, Brandon. Well, he got his new boat, and they bought a $700,000 boat. They bought $20,000 worth of tackle. In their first 2 trips offshore, they didn't do that great. But their third trip offshore, their second trip, they had gone and they had actually traveled they went about 110 miles to one of the rigs. Well, the fish weren't at the rig that they were at, but they were at the next rig 8 more miles away. They didn't know that until they got home that day, and their buddies had killed the tunas and they had caught none. Well, by subscribing to this, and yes, the information is normally like a day old, but we can look back at the history on these different sites. You can go back in days, and let's just say that there's a temperature break here. Well, it was here today, yesterday it was here, yesterday here, and the day before that, and it's been moving about 4 miles every day. Well, I know that tomorrow it's going to be about 4 more miles to the west. If you get the one-time shot, you have to kind of extrapolate that. Or, if you subscribe to the service, then I take and download today's images onto my iPad. It has a live cursor on it, so I don't even have to write down the numbers before I leave home. I just take my iPad with me and have it downloaded, and I can sit here and run my cursor along this line and have the GPS numbers all day long. So, having those images, whether, in some days it's more about chlorophyll, some days it's more about water temperature. We're still in the time of year where it's more about water temperature. Later in the year, it will become more about chlorophyll, and which brings nutrient-rich water, because there'll become a time when all the water is blended to the same temperature. And it also gives you water clarity. When you see these lines offshore, they may not necessarily have grass in the line, but these distinct tide lines offshore have a distinct color change. The water on one side is kind of a bluish to green color, and the other side is just cobalt blue, sparkly blue. You can look at the prop wash, and it just looks like little sparkles going off. That's that pretty blue water that we're looking for. So having, you can get the places to go real easy. Now, what about once we get there? Well, a good portion of whether we're fishing for marlin, or wahoos, or dolphin, or snapper, or grouper, it's all about whether it's lures, especially on baits. It's about bait presentation. So, I'm going to talk about the different types of lures, But there are hard baits and stuff that don't require you to put any kind of bait on there. But most of the lures that we would fish with, I would rig with the ballyhoo. Well, when I'm gonna do ballyhoo, you want to make sure when you come to buy ballyhoo, you know, customers get in our freezers and they'll move stuff around. And we know that. They're going to break a few of the packages. The ballyhoo packages are vacuum packed. You want to pay close attention. Buy ones that the vacuum is still solid on the pack, not one that's been broken. Once the vacuum breaks on the pack, they'll start to create ice crystals in the bag. Those ice crystals will in turn start to destroy and suck the moisture out of the baits. Your baits aren't nearly as good. So look for the ones that have real clean eyes and their vacuum packs are still real good. This is an inexpensive little product. It's called ballyhoo brine. Several different models of this on the market. It's a mixture of salt and baking soda and a couple other things in here. Well, when you go to thaw your bait out, I see people that go, they're coming in the morning and they're going wahoo fishing and they buy bait now. Well, that's a negative Ghost Rider. We buy bait a day or two before we're going to go fishing. So I'm going to take a bucket of ice water, pour about half of this in there, open those packages and put those ballyhoo in that ice water in this brine mixture and slowly bring them up to temperature and thaw them out. The salt will toughen the outside of the ballyhoo so they troll for a lot longer, and so you don't waste as much bait, and your baits, you control them for longer periods of time in the water. The more time that the bait is in the water, the more fish we're going to catch. But I have all my ballyhoo. The night before I'm going to go, every ballyhoo is already rigged before I ever leave the dock. When I'm offshore fishing, I never rig a bait fishing. And there's different people that give you different opinions on it. You know, we have too many wahoo here. You know, of course for marlin and dolphin and everything, we don't necessarily need wire. But with wahoos, it's either 150 pound or heavier wire or 300 pound mono. Well, with 300 pound mono, if I make my leaders out of those, I have to have the leader pre-made onto the lure. So each lure has to get rigged before we go fishing. But with number 10 wire, and we'll pass this guy around, you'll see that I've just twisted a loop into the end of it. So with this, I can take almost any lure that we have. And run the lure down over a pre-rigged wire. So I could have, you know, I'm gonna buy 24 to 36 ballyhoo, have them all rigged up. I don't have to have 24 lures already rigged up, because I can change the lures out during the course of the day. And then rigging a ballyhoo nowadays with the little ballyhoo springs that you'll see on here is so easy. In the old days, we used copper wire. Man, with the copper wire, you had to run it through his nose, out his gill, and around again, and back and through, and do all this BS. That's a pain. On our ballyhoo, there's a long beak and a short beak. So the first thing we do after we get all our ballyhoo thawed out and brought up to temperature without getting them hot, the first thing we want to do is take the ballyhoo by the head and the tail and squish all of his guts out of his little pee hole area. Get all that out of the inside. So we're going to start pinching right here, work all our way down, and work all the pink stuff out. Next thing we're going to do is break off his bills so they're the same length. And then my hook, I take the hook, and of course the wire is coming from the eye of the hook. Now I want the hook inside the ballet hoop. The wire's coming out. And when I twist this, you're going to see there's going to be a little piece of wire that's left over of the main leader. You shove that from the bottom jaw out through the top of the nose of the ballet hoop, and it sticks up like this. And then the little ballet hoop spring slides down and just screws right onto that little thing to hold him on. The key is get it to work out the right distance. So if each time we want to lay the hook up on the ballet hoop and mark where it should come out. That way when we take the hook and run it in one gill and through the belly cavity, I know where it needs to come out so that the ballet hoop is straight on the rig. And then once I get them all thawed out, then I have a cooler that's dedicated just for bait. And they make all these sophisticated bait trays that go in the coolers. The best thing, you know, and the bait trays are great. You want the metal bait trays because they conduct cold and heat much better. You want to keep those ballet hoop very cold in on their own cooler. And then after I put them in there, I lay them out I use cookie sheets. I stole my wife's cookie sheets and put them in my coolers. And then I sprinkle some extra ballet hoop brine onto them, and then they'll be ready to go for the whole trip that day. Just him around there, everybody look at him. See how he's ready. He's a fake ballet hoop, so he doesn't smell so bad. So, lures. Definitely need a variety of colors of lures, because when I go fishing each day, I don't know what they're going to bite. I don't know what today's color is going to be, water clarity, water conditions, and that kind of thing. But there are standards of lures. I can go almost anywhere. I can fish Destin, I can go to Costa Rica, I can go to the Bahamas, I can go to the Virgin Islands, so long as I have a basic set of lures. A red and a white and a blue and a white islander. These are just must-haves. A couple of soft head lures. And because I have red and white, blue and white in the islanders, I opt for a dolphin color and a black and orange or black and purple in my soft heads. 2 cedar plugs, which are probably some of the oldest lures that we've ever fished with. They've been around for ages. Great Wahoo Dolphin tuna lures. But just a red and a white and a plain cedar color. The cedar one, as soon as you get it wet, it will turn blood red. Don't let it fake you out that it looks cheap. Probably one of the best lures you can buy. It's like $6. Cheap. And then I want a couple deep running Yozuri Bonita type lures and a couple darker colors. Now, so I got other lures on the board up here, but those are my, if you came in and said, okay, I don't have anything, you got to buy those 8. And then eventually, the soft head, they're mold craft. And then the dolphin color, and then black or orange or black and pink, black and something. But those 8 lures you just got to have. Now eventually, I want you to have 6 red and white ones. I know everybody can't do this on their first time in the store. I want you to have 6 red and white ones. I want you to have 6 blue ones, 6 green ones, 6 black ones. And the reason for that is, when we first go out in the morning, I'm going to put a spread out. So here's my bow, and we're going to pretend that everybody has outriggers for this display. We're going to put our outriggers out. Our short flat line, right here. That should be my largest and darkest lure. The bigger the fish, whether it's a Wahoo dolphin, blue marlin, doesn't matter. biggest fish, he doesn't mind swimming right to the transom of the boat and eating it right in the prop wash. He doesn't have a problem with that. So that's why we put our largest thing closer to the boat. And then from the long corner, and I always have my boat set up the same way. Starboard side's always going to be the short side. So over here, that rope is wrong. This is largest, darkest. And here, this is the next size in lure and the next color down the color spectrum. And then over here, we're going to have one that comes to our outrigger and goes out here. And then here, a little further. And then right in the center, I'm running a shotgun rig. Which the center rig here, this is going to be my lightest color and the smallest lure that I'm going to put in the water. And could be something as simple as that ballyhoo rig that's going around, just a ballyhoo, nothing else, no skirt, no color, just a skipping ballyhoo right down the center. It's really important that you have all these at a different distance. So when we make turns and stuff, the lines, if the lines are at the same distance, when we make a turn, they run into each other and tangle. When they're at a different distance, they'll go under each other and come back out. So that's why we want them all at a different distance. Not an exact science, but a good rule of thumb. This shortest one, this one's in our third weight back. Because your boat's going along and our trolling speed. So at bait speeds, the trolling speed should be somewhere between 4 and 7 knots. And that should be at a point where your boat's just kind of digging a little bit. If we're too flat, we want to trim the motors a little bit to get the bow up. So we're actually digging just a little bit. That'll throw that nice big rolling weight behind the boat. So we got third weight, 5th, 7th, 9, and 11. If you have them in those waves, those will be your optimal. That'll give you the nice spacing that you're looking for. And it's important to put the bait in the proper place. So these weights, you got these weights rolling off. They're doing like this. That bait needs to be sitting right here, right in the face of that wave. If you put the bait on top of it or back here, now for the fish to get that, he's got to come from underneath it. Kind of like all the sharks we've been seeing on Shark Week. You got to jump out of the water to get it. If we got it in the face of this wave, he can swim up here and be right here behind it. And you'll see him eat it and just come out of the face of the wave. That's more natural to him. This is having that bait too far back in that wave. It's very unnatural for that fish. The predator, if there's a predator after this bait fish, he's going to be trying to get away. If he's back in this part of the wave, he's not trying to get away. That's unnatural for him. How long am I raising part of this?
Are those actually riding on the top of the water, or are you putting trolling legs on to get them down? How can you tell how that far back?
Most of these will run slightly underneath the surface of the water. If it's a real turbulent day, you can definitely run some trolling leads to keep them under the surface. But normally like king mackerel fishing, we're running a lot of trolling leads. But these, we don't really have to. Most of the lures are big enough. So, I told you at some point in time, you need to have 5 or 6 of this lure. Why is that? When we first go out, I'm going to put out all these little different colored spreads. Because when we first get out there, I'm looking for the bite. I don't know what today's color is really going to be. And so I'm searching a little bit. Well, after 30 minutes or an hour, we start to have a bite or two here and there, and kind of notice that You know, the green, well, not so much important in fun fishing, but if the bite is not happening really good, it can be. Also for in a tournament situation, I want to be able to control where my bite happens. So if I found out that green is the color that's getting bit, the dolphin color is getting bit every day, even though I told you this is your darkest color, the green lure is going to move to my short corner rod. This is going to be green. And as far as the other lure colors, I could care less. Purple, 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 purple. I just want all the others to be the same color. So we got to think about this in terms of we're out in the African Serengeti. Big old herd of wildebeest out here. There's 5 or 6 lions all around. Y'all are wildebeest and the lions are over here. What do the lions want to eat? They want the young, the old, the weak, and the injured. Here's your young, the old, the weak, the injured. I guarantee you, if you figure out the color pattern early in the day, you figure out what color that they're going to be biting that day. Mr. Marlin, Mr. Dolphin, Mr. Wahoo, he swims up here, he looks at here, he comes to the spread, he looks here, he makes this cut, and all of a sudden he comes across here. You'll see Marlin. You normally don't see the Wahoo or the Dolphin bite. But you'll see the Marlin back there. They'll come up, and they're just back there. You see the Marlin, he's just kind of grayish, darkish blue. When he sees that one, all of a sudden all his colors just came on, pep fins popped out, and there's just this massive explosion. He ate that one. That's why you have to have different multiples of the same colors. You don't have to have it on every lure, but you need at least 2 or 3 in your arsenal where you have multiple colors, multiples of the same color, so we can do stuff like this.
I assume you want to buy it on the one that was closest to you.
That one's closest to the boat. I have more control over that rod than I do any of the others. When the line is way, way behind the boat, more bad things can happen when he hits it. There's more stretch in the line. There's the hooks. You don't get as good a hook set. There's a lot of things that can happen farther away from the boat. So I always want it to happen as close as I can. So yes. Am I going too fast? Everybody kind of keeping up with me? We're good. All right.
Tim, what would you recommend if you don't have downriggers, you got a smaller boat, if you're just using the holes in the back of your boat, how would you set up for a smaller setup?
I would. You can easily troll 4 or 5 rods out of a boat this size with no downrigger, no outrigger. You don't have to have it. Just makes what's nice about the outriggers are they allow you to get the 2 outside baits outside the prop wash. They're in what we call clean water. So that allows you to get it into cleaner water where it's easier for the fish to see it. The same thing with a downrigger. One of these two shorter lines could be on a downrigger and be 30 or 40 or 50 feet down looking for a thermocline. That's a little bit more advanced fishing. What I would rather you have for offshore fishing have outriggers. I know that outriggers are kind of unaffordable for everybody. They're big, they're bulky, they're in the way, everybody don't want to have them. There's a company online, and I've looked at carrying their stuff, and I just haven't got around to it. There's only limited space in the store. There's a company called Birdsall Marine. There's several of them that make this, but Birdsall Marine I can think about. They make what's called an outrider. It's a little gizmo that looks kind of like a rod holder, but it will go into one of your rod holders on the side of the boat, and it's laid out at an angle this way, so your rods can go in it. So your rod is actually trolling like this, which that in turn works as an inexpensive outrigger. I think they're about $150 a pair, but it's a pretty good little investment if you're going to do much of this kind of fishing without having to go all the way to outriggers. It's not the ideal situation, but it works pretty good. So I'd rather you have something like that. Instead of trying to throw downriggers in, so we've got our lines out here. And it's not a couple of items that I should have brought, but there again, just getting everything in the truck. I would really like to see you have some teasers of some sort. What I like to run is off of this cleat right here, and this cleat right here. On the short rigger side, or on the short corner side, over here, I like to have what's called a dredge rig. It's a circular rig that we put a trolling lead on and have it troll deeper underneath the water. And then on this side over here, I would have a daisy chain. And the daisy chain that I like the best right now is called a flippy floppy because it has the little squids that go here. It has these little arms that come off of it and have little bitty squids on it. And it throws a tremendous amount of action into the water. Both are real good for attracting fish. You'll see that most of the dredges and spreaders come with a hook at the end of the dredge or the end of the spreader. I suggest you cut that hook off, throw it away, save it for something else, do something with it. You'll see people who put these dredges or the teaser actually onto the rod. They eliminate this line, so they have it connected to their actual rod, and they have the lure right here. That's just a dangerous rig. Somebody's gonna get hurt. When you get all this reeled into the boat, we still got the fish way out here. You got your gaff man here. You got your angler here. And all that stuff spread between the angler and the gaff man. If that fish takes off, that's a good way to get somebody hurt. So I never run my teasers or my dredgers in line. They're always run on a separate hand line off a cleat. It's just too dangerous. I don't want to see one of my buddies get hurt. But I do love having them in the water. So we talked about the core lures. Now, other things that we can do. You know, some days we get out there, and generally speaking, we're going to fish with ballyhoo or flying fish. But some days, there's an old fly fish term called match the hatch. What that means, if they're eating little bitty baits, I need to have little bitty items. If they're having great big baits, I need the big size items. The additions to your arsenal are smaller baits in the little islander sizes. Some Yozuri hard plugs that don't run as deep as these. The longer, slender Yozuri is good for a lot of you that don't have heavy enough tackle yet. You're just kind of building your way into this. This lure at 7 knots doesn't have a tremendous amount of drag to it. I could run this on a Shimano TLD 25. I could run it on a Pin 4-aught if I had to. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of drag. This Yozuri Bonita, even at 7 knots, it's hard to troll that on a TLD 25. This is going to pull drag off that reel. This lure has a tremendous amount of drag to it. So having some more stick-style slender lures will serve you real well. We have lures like the black barks and the fathom lures. These are designed to run without a ballyhoo. Some days, maybe we're out of ballyhoo. Maybe you forgot to buy them. Maybe the fishing bite was so good that we just ran out. For whatever reason, we need some skirted lures that can be run without baits on them. I told you earlier that I rig most of my ballyhoo on wire. On a skirted lure where I'm not going to have a bait in it, I do like to run these on mono because it gives them a little bit better action. And because they don't have a bait on, I need all the action I can get. When you're rigging up your soft lures, 200 to 300 pound mono, and our hook set that we're going to put in here, it's real important that this hook set be in the right place. It should be just outside the skirt range, about a ½ inch outside the skirt. If everybody can see that, we're gonna pass this one around too. Just be careful with this, we've got a real sharp hook in it. If the hook is too far outside the skirt, it causes the lure to tangle real bad. It'll get kind of knotted up on itself. It's also, if we happen to catch a world record fish, the shank, the point of the hook to be a world record class fish must be inside the length of the skirt. If the hook point is, if the skirt was shorter, like this is not IGFA legal. You wouldn't get a ticket for fishing that way. Just if you happen to catch a fish that was a world record fish, you wouldn't count. Also, if your hook set is way too short and it's way up inside the lure, two bad things can happen there. The skirt tangles and wraps around the lure, fouling it, making it spin in the water, doesn't do good. Also, if the hook is too close to the lure, when the fish bites it, he gets the lure head in his mouth. Well, that almost works as a deterrent because the hook, you don't get very much of a bite on the hook. It's real easy to pull the fish off. As far as your hook sizes considers for the lure, the hook size should be slightly, just slightly larger than the size of the head. Should easily slip over. You see this one has about 1/4 inch of play. If the hook is too small, there again, the fish's mouth closes over the head of the lure. As he slides back to the hook, he misses. If the hook is too big, the lure tends to tangle worse. So it is important to have your hook size be correct size and be rigged to the correct distance. And then, so like the party boats going out, they're going to run 12 knots. And some of the charter boats, they're going to go back and forth from their places anywhere in that 12 to 15 knot range. But if I was going to go out wahoo fishing, we're going to run, 50 miles to where I want to go fishing today. I want to be able to spend at least some of that time fishing. A lot of y'all gonna have boats going to go 50 miles an hour. At 50, I can't help it. But at 20, we can still wahoo fish at 20 miles an hour. Dolphin can't catch it that fast. The wahoo, he can run it down 20 knots, it's not a problem. But keeping stuff in the water, the Yozuru Marinas are great, they'll run up to about 12 knots. You will see the party boats drag these. The charter boats, if they want to drag, the charter boats that are dragging these, they're backing off the throttle a little bit. Because it won't run that fast. If we can get a lure, like this 1 fathom lure here, and I believe this guy either weighs 10 or 12 ounces. This is a very heavy, you come up here and pick this one up, this is a very heavy lure. If you come up here and look at the little molecraft lures, you'll notice they have a center hole in them. A center hole means the lure is going to run straight. It's not going to swim. A center hole, pointy head lure, that's going to be the fastest lure we can drag. Center hole, flat face is the next fastest. A center hole concave, we got to start slowing down. And then, if we get like this little bark here, he's got a cupped nose, a couple holes, jet holes cut in it, and the space where the line will go through on the leader is offset. This is a very slow lure. This lure won't troll much more than about 6 knots. So, with that said, so we're gonna go run offshore and go wahoo fishing. We get about 4, 5, 6 miles offshore. I'm gonna dump 2 of these in the water. 20 knots, not a problem. Now, if 10, 12 knots, you can put this halfway across the showroom and this will stay in the water. At 20 knots, this is past the door, much, much further than we would normally fish. You can look back there and see it'll just be up there just skipping on top of the water if you don't have it far enough back. It does require The rod, this Talica, would definitely troll that lure at 20 knots. This rod would not. This rod is much too light because that lure will get the bounces. It's hot in here. They're working on the air conditioner. Next seminar will be cooler because I'm hot too. Hot dog. But this rod would be definitely a little bit too light. We need something control that fast. We're going to need a rod that has a fair amount of backbone to it. Be able, otherwise, that lure will get to skipping, and you'll just see the rod just sitting there in the rod holder doing this. This is not good. Because I guarantee you, once this rod starts doing this, that lure's fouled up. Skirts are all tangled up. Bad things are happening back there in the water. You may be thinking that we're driving along fishing. You're dragging something, but you ain't really fishing. I ain't gonna bite that. Leader material for your hard baits. I skipped this and I saw my leader sitting here. I'm glad I saw that sitting there. When I rig ballyhoo, I really like the straight wire. It's much easier and quicker to rig. It allows you to make the ballyhoo pins out of it. And with those type of lures, they typically run fairly straight and do what they're supposed to do. The straight wire, it is on a lure like this, it's easy to get it kinked. That straight wire gets a kink in it and it breaks really easy. On your stick baits, I pre-make a bunch of leaders, and most people will crimp the leader material directly to the lure. I don't really like doing it that way. I go one extra step. Make my leaders about 6 feet long, the same on that ballyhoo that I was passing around. I have a swivel at the top end, and I have a snap swivel on this end. That way, on the Yozuri, the narrower, slimmer stick baits, these aren't too bad. They have motion to them, but they're not horrible. This Yozuri Bonita, it's going through the water, and you'll see that rod, it's just sitting there going. It's just a vibrating. It's not bouncing, it's just vibrating. And that vibration is what's creating that reaction bite. If you crimp the leader material directly to the lure, it kind of holds this leader stiff. And after a while, I've seen people come in the store and go, I need better leader material. This stuff you sold me broke. It's because of all that vibration right down there on that leader material. I put a snap swivel on here and put the snap swivel there. That vibration goes into the snap swivel and it loses. By the time it gets to the wire, it's not doing that so bad anymore. You almost never lose the lure because of wire failure if you have a snap swivel in it. One extra step. And you don't really, for these, if I was tournament fishing, I would go to the expense of buying ball bearing swivels. Ball bearing swivels are going to run $2, $3, $4, depending on the size of the swivel, maybe even $6 or $7 a swivel. A regular Bill Fisher Coach Lock snap, these come in a bag of 36 for like 12 bucks. It's much less expensive. But there's no real need to go that extra expense of ball bearing if we're not tournament fishing. We're just out there fun fishing. And as far as one other thing I forgot there are different trails of thought on the lure that's passing around that I showed you with the hook sizes on it, and it has to be at the right length of the skirt. I like that when I have single hook rig. There's several trains of thought. I don't particularly like the double hook rig. I think it actually causes the lure to foul more, and I think you lose more fish because of it. I have really good friends of mine that are very good fishermen. They'll argue to the death that you need the two hook rigs. And then there's two hook rigs that are 180 degree opposing, and there's two hook rigs that are 90 degrees. And there's good arguments for all the different ones. Maybe just something you want to experiment with. My trend, I go with the single hook. I've had many less failures that way. So velocities, we got questions. Where we at? Nobody's got questions. Everybody knows how to catch a wahoo or dolphin.
Not yet.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You didn't mention trolling leads for Wahoo, getting down on the beach, or anything, you mentioned downriggers.
Downriggers or trolling leads, either one. You can, like these high-speed lures, you can definitely go with trolling leads on these. In the old days, we used to sell a high-speed lure called a panhandler. They only weighed about 4 ounces. So at that time, we sold a lot of trolling leads. But anymore, the lures, we've talked to a lot of lure manufacturer companies. This lure, we actually sell this in like a 4, a 6, an 8, 12. So we have lures now that are actually heavy enough. We can eliminate having to have the trolling lead in line, which is just, it's another failure point, it's another danger point. So, yes, there used to be a time where we sold it. And we still sell a lot of trolling leads because everybody, if you still have some of the older lures that only weigh 2 or 3 ounces and you want to use those until you lose them, definitely you can add a trolling lead to any lure that's pointy nosed and center hole. And we control that lure very, very fast. I just go into a trolling lead. Absolutely. Yes.
You want that high-speed lure to stay in the water and not skip, don't be skipping across the top?
Yeah, the question was, should the high-speed lure stay in the water? At least 90% of the time, it should be in the water. If it's out of the water very often, it's going to tumble. And when it tumbles, it's going to tangle. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Tim, what do you think about planers?
Planers work good at slow speed. I would much prefer trolling lead to a planer. Planers are very dangerous. I've been hurt by one real bad, but cut my hands open on them. If you're going to use a planer, there is another technique that you can do. Planers are really designed to run inline on your rod. But if you don't have a downrigger and you want to fish deep, you can use a planer. I didn't really think about planers much. I haven't used one in years. So I didn't even bring one, but what it is, it's a little metal board per se, and it's at an angle on your line, and the water pressing on the face of it drives it deep. Well, off of one of these corners, off of this cleat right here, I have about 100 feet of 300-pound mono, and then I'll have my little planer right here. Now, I would treat this almost like I do an outrigger. This planer definitely wouldn't be in line, and they make a larger, high-speed planer size. I would just put the planer in the water. Let the bait out to where you want it. Just let it out behind the boat. Take a rubber band, wrap it around, have your snap swivel and rubber band. Put the rubber band around the snap swivel, and then the rubber band around the line. Clip this snap swivel onto this 300-pound mono, and it will run all the way, just the pressure of the water pressure will take this all the way down to the planer. Put a number 32 rubber band on there. Rubber bands come size 16, 32, and 64. 32 rubber band breaks at about 5 pounds of pressure. Just pop. It's just the perfect size for wahoo and dolphin fishing, the size baits we fish with. If I was fishing for a big old marlin, I had a big old bonita or a big old mullet back there, I'd probably use a 64 rubber band to get a little more tension. And at the end of the day, I never pull this planer up. We're trolling and we're catching fish and it's just staying in the water. At the end of the day, there might be, in the old days when I did this a lot, there'd be 25 or 30 snap swivels down there at the planer. And I just pull the planer up one time. Don't have the planer actually put in line. But it is a good, downrigger's $300, high-speed planer kit, everything to rig one up is probably 30. So it is a nice poor man's downrigger that you can get an actual downrigger. Good question, because I hadn't thought about using them in a lot of years. Yes, sir.
You're talking about that water that spits off the spur and goes down south and southwest. Is it silly to go over to the southeast 40, 50 miles for Wahoo or Dolphin, or do you ever hear many people out there?
Absolutely.
Is that still good over there?
Yep. The question was, should we go southeast, southwest? I don't ever really know that, you know, without looking at a temperature chart or something. I need something to kind of get me in the right direction, because you think about the Squiggles, which is a great area, that's off to the southeast. So the Squiggles are over here, the pass is here, and the principal steps are here. This is 60 miles, this is 60 miles, this is 60 miles. Well, that's a lot of water to cover. I don't know in the morning whether the fish are over here, fish are over here. But if I have a temperature chart, and the temperature chart gives me a couple of things. This whole section of water over here to the west is green. This whole section of water right here is blue-green. This whole section of water over here by the Squiggles is blue. And your 2-degree temperature break right here, well, you can guarantee I'm not going to be fishing over here. I'm going to be fishing this blue water line on that 2-degree temperature break. I don't know where that is on a given day until I've looked at something. It's kind of like going, it'd be kind of like going bottom fishing without a bottom machine. Got to know where the water's at. You get out there and it's just a tremendous amount of water. Yes.
How deep and what do you need to look for, like bottom structure or floating object?
Definitely. Bottom structure won't do you a lot of good when you're Wahoo and Dolphin. But floating structure, for certain. If you're going along out there, I've seen a 5-gallon bucket float. We see a 5-gallon bucket, it's time to stop. Put out some bait, start going in a circle. You're going to catch a Wahoo, a Dolphin, triple tail, something. Anything floating in the water. I've gone up, we've been 50 miles offshore and saw a kayak. We caught a kayak and brought it home. Somebody's beach raft is blown offshore. Anything that's out there like that is a great area to fish. Absolutely.
How deep and what temperature would be the best?
I don't have a temperature that I say is the best. It needs to be at least 72. And I would prefer it not to be more than about 85. But any kind of temperature in between there, so long as there's a break, there's a solid break. If I get a 2-degree break, it could be 74 and 72, or it could be 84 and 82. I'm just looking for that break.
The depth
We would like it to be at least 300 feet, and we really start to get serious when it's 600. And the top end, there is no deep end. Because we get out to the canyon, it's going to be a couple of miles deep. So we don't worry about the deep. The shallow end, we worry about the not deep. Yes?
It's the best time of year for gaffers versus bailers.
Gaffers versus baiters.
Size-wise, I'm
Oh.
from north, so we
Gotcha.
reference everything gaffers, bailers.
Yep. We start getting our bigger dolphin about mid-May, and we'll have them all the way through 1st of October. Wahoos are going to be there 15th of April, and we'll have them well into November, December, depending on the weather. The Wahoo truly never leave. They just get deeper out off the rigs. The Dolphin actually, I think they migrate all the way away. Yes.
Can you jig for Wahoo?
Let me answer that.
There you go.
A month ago, we were jigging for Blackfin Tuna at the Petronas, and my buddy said, I've got a Wahoo. And we all said, a few tough words I can't say, you're crazy. He said, I've got a Wahoo. He comes up, and we're like, yeah, you got a barracuda. He pulled in about a 40-pound wahoo. So anything can happen.
Yeah. The answer to, I think the real answer to the question is, you will definitely catch some sometimes, because we've caught them before jigging for tunas also, but I don't think it's a very effective way. Plus, most of the time when you're jigging for tunas, you're probably going to be jigging a 60-pound mono leader. And when the wahoo comes by, your $20 Shimano jig just swam away. Which I don't like that either. Actually, I like, as a fisherman, I don't like that. And running tackle shop, it's cool if you want to go jig for with a 60-pound mono for tunas for wahoo. That works out really good for us. Any more questions?
What's this, like a standard procedure when you do get a wahoo? I mean, you keep the thing idling, what's the best way to go? Or you don't stop and fight, do you? Or?
I don't stop unless something terrible is happening. We're running out of line, whatever, because there can always be more, just like king mackerel fishing. So I want to keep going. Maybe we hook 2 or 3 at a time. If we got lighter tackle, he's running all the line off the reel. That changes my game plan. We got to reel this stuff in. We got to get the angler to the bow of the boat. Put the angler up here. Captain's driving away. Here we go. We're going to chase it. So my opinion can change depending on the situation. But if I have the right tackle, we're going to keep in motion and start circling. Get the fish inside and circle around the fish and keep him inside of us.
Are you slowing down?
Generally, no.
No.
So
I always slow down if I have to.
you don't even slow down if you're trolling 12 knots, 14
The 12, 12 inches. You can't reel
on
it.
5 to 8 knots, whatever, 10.
If I'm fishing at bait speed, 5 or 6, 7 knots,
You just keep right on going.
keep on going, baby. 'Cause we might get, once we realize, okay, if we're 10 minutes into it and we ain't got another bite, we can back it off then and make it easier on the angler. Because it's going to be tough on your angler at that speed. But I want to troll for a little ways just to make sure there's not more in the
Don't
air.
bring in the extra line, leave them out.
Not right. After 5 minutes, we're cool. We're in real stuff anymore. Unless anybody got any more questions, we appreciate y'all coming out.
If you believe any of what he just said right there, about actually just slowing it down to a specific speed after you actually hook the fish. When you actually do hook up and everybody forgets everything they've ever learned about fishing, that's typically what happens. It'll be in reverse within no time. Trying to catch up to that 90-pound streak that just fired across your line. But I like to listen to him talk about it. It's much easier said than done in the showroom.
You can buy and change this thing. Yeah. It's like, oh, there's a drum fish.
So did everybody learn some new stuff tonight? Is there any more questions at all? And next seminar is pier fishing. So no boat needed. Pier fishing is a lot of fun at the end of the summer. A lot of fun. The June grass starts to go away when? Next month?
I've been clearing up in some spots already. And the tarpon. Now, I know we're talking about walleyes and dolphin. Whether you want to pier fish for tarpon or you want to boat fish for tarpon, tarpon fishing is off the hook good. And if you have an experience, if you think cobia fishing is fun, tarpon fishing, y'all caught a nice one. I know you got one.
Yeah, we like to tarpon fish here, and it was something that was somewhat of a secret, and kind of still is because not a lot of people do it, But the tarpon migration on the beaches here is as good, if not better, than anywhere in the Keys, and the fish don't have any pressure. So 2 places that you can go to get away from the boat traffic that you deal with in Destin this time of the year is you can run east past Sandestin, or you can actually run west past the pier, because they're not getting a whole lot of activity. And the primo time to tarpon fish is between, good visibility is really between 8 a.m. and 11. 7:30 to 11 is your prime bite for tarpon. They bite really good before that, but they're hard to see because these fish are migrating from east to west. So have you ever anybody here cobia fish? Have you ever cobia fished into the sunlight in the morning? It's a whole lot easier when you turn the boat around, isn't it? Because you get the sun to your back. Same thing with tarpon. But the problem is you don't turn around and fish with tarpon. The tarpon are already very spooky. So when you see the fish, you are literally anchored up on the second sandbar, that farthest sandbar out. And when you see a wad of tarpon, it could be 10 or it could be 310. coming through at a time. The typical pod of tarpon has about 70 to 80 fish in it. Okay? So now that we're on the tarpon seminar here, tarpon 101 in 2 minutes or less for Destin, Florida. So you run down, and the perfect boat for this is something that is nimble and quick, okay? And if you don't have a boat that has a shallow enough freeboard to accommodate a trolling motor to keep you like really stealthy and almost anchored in one position to where you can maneuver around the sandbar, you could fish in 435 Everglades, okay? The higher you are, the better you are, because you can see down. The higher you are, obviously, the deeper you can see into the water. So having that tower is really, really nice. After about 9, it really doesn't matter because you can see them so well, okay? So if we're fishing on the beach, this is about the size of the second sandbar, okay, the width of this showroom. Typically, I'll anchor up, I'll throw the anchor, or put the trolling motor in about the middle of the stretch, okay? And then as the fish start to come, now you're just chilling out as you start to see a lot of fish. Typically, the fish will stay in the same line for hours. You might see a wad here, you might see a wad here on this other 60-yard part of the bar. They typically run the same line for the first 3 or 4 hours in the morning. So once you find the fish, okay, you position your boat for the rest of that morning to where, remember we got a south wind, the bow's facing south, it's blowing the boat back. We want to have the boat positioned to where we're casting off the stern and we're using the wind to get our baits in front of the fish. These fish are super spooky. Typically anything that looks like a shiner is better than a cigar minnow, but they will eat a cigar minnow. You usually have to drown a bunch of baits to finally get a hook up. And then once you get a hook up, you got less than 10% of catching the fish because the bone in their mouth is so incredibly hard to hook. But the cool thing about hooking them on the sandbar is if they stay on the bar and they don't run deep, then it's a crazy acrobatic show in 6 to 10 foot of water. And if you don't like the fish, you will be hooked in.
What were you saying you used for a bait?
Anything that resembles a shiner. Anything that resembles a thin, tall, whether it be a herring, an LY, anything that resembles that instead of a cigar minnow, for sure is your best choice. Whatever you're catching in the pass or just around the mouth of the pass is what they're typically eating on the beach. But the key is very seldomly will you misfire and be 20 feet away from a tarpon and he'll run over and eat your bait. These fish are just kind of chilling out, they're migrating, they're not really feeding when you see them like that. So you have to kind of leave the fish and almost drag the bait in front of its nose and just let it get a free line. And you can, I'm a mono fan when I'm fishing. I don't like fishing braid for tarpon. So the perfect setup is like the standard cobia setup or tarpon setup. It's a great setup that you can get from Half Fish Tackle. It's an 8-foot, medium heavy action rod, like a 7500 or 8500 10 series reel or Shimano or wherever you want to go with. Just enough to where you can spool it up pretty well with 25 to 30 pound Andy, Seagar, or something like that in a mono, right? And then you don't want to use a swivel. You want to run, you want to tie about at the very maximum, because this water is so clear, the very maximum you want to use is a 60-pound fluorocarbon leader. And I want at least 6 to 8 feet of it, at least 6 to 8 feet. So I'm going to attach those 2 lines, however you want to do it, uni to uni, whatever knot you want that you feel comfortable with. Preferably the tag end facing back to the angler, because when you throw and that knot's leaving the guides of your rod, you don't want it to catch up because you want as much distance as you can possibly get. So you got this 6 to 10 foot fluorocarbon leader, and the hook to use is a number 6 owner circle hook. When you get that owner circle hook, you know all circle hooks favor a little bit to where the point's favored in. Okay, just take a set of pliers and bend it another centimeter, possibly just another centimeter, and you'll find that you'll hook up instead of jumping more fish. You'll actually hook up and fight more fish.
So a little more offset in it?
A little bit. I mean, I'm talking about a centimeter max. Just kick it out a little bit with a set of pliers, and that's your rig. And if you're buying bait, buy $40, not buy $20, because if you get lucky, there's been mornings where I've seen 50 fish in 3 hours, and there's mornings I've seen 1,000 fish. And It's frustrating because, and here's another quick tip, it's frustrating because if you're in your bay boat or your big center console, or you still have the tiara, if you're in your tiara, okay? Rather than dropping a windlass, or rather than dropping a standard anchor, it's nice to have a backup anchor. And a tarpon anchor is shorter, obviously, because you're fishing in shallow water. So about 30 feet. 30 foot of rope, maybe 10 foot of chain, and just like a number 8, or maybe possibly a 13 Danforth. The key is you want this shorter line with a buoy on it, okay? So you're going to throw your anchor, you're going to tie off where the buoy is. Why do you have a buoy on a short anchor line? So when you hook up, what do? What's that tarpon going to do when you hook up? He's going to sign north. He's dipping. And you got to be able to chase that fish down before he spools you out, right? You want to cut him off before he gets down into deep water, because 100-pound tarpon and 30 foot of water sucks. 60 foot of water is worse. And you will test your manhood on that fish if he gets down deep and doesn't come up, right? So you want to fight him on the flats, let him tire himself out, jump and raise hell and do all that kind of stuff. But in order for you to get back on the line that you saw this tarpon at, you have to know where you're at, okay? And that's when you run back to that anchor line that's still sitting in the water, and you fought this fish a quarter of a mile down the beach. Once you're either boating or losing, you can run back up and hook up, and there's the line of tarpon that you saw earlier. And they'll keep coming through the same. That's just a picture-perfect situation. For a weekend guide, might do it twice a year. Obviously, you don't need to go to those lengths. But the tarpon thing's cool. We should do a tarpon seminar one year. So there used to be a total of 4 or 5 guys that really knew it and how to do it. And now you're starting to see more and more. Like the full pull guys, you know, they've done a Cobia seminar for us here a time or two. They're all laid up at sight fishing. So now they have a specific skiff with a tower, and they go out and they fish for tarpon as much as they do for Cobia this time of year, because it's so good. So if you have any questions, I can talk about it afterwards. All right, so we're going to do a drawing real quick for a couple of prizes, a couple of hats. HD Howell, where you at? Glenn Miller, you still here? Nope. All right. Thomas Young. Ferris Powell. Thank you, sir. Donald, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. This is a Yankee last name, because that little terminology that you used earlier, nobody here understood. There you go. Thank you very much. And one more quick thing before you split. I told you about the destination events that we have, where we cruise around and do the stuff as a team. So not this weekend, but the next weekend is the Blue Angels Pensacola. Is anybody going to that? You got to go to that, right? Well, if you would like, we have a group that goes over. We send our 53 Regal out the night before, so we get a really good spot. So we anchor it up in all 4 corners, and then we go out there and we all tie it together, and it's a whole lot of fun, especially when that same storm comes through every single year late in the event. Better be tied up to something strong for sure. Anyhow, and then you all got the half-hitch discount cards. $20 off of any $50 purchase or more, and you can use that tomorrow to go buy your stuff or your tarpon leaders and hooks. Once again, thank you guys very much. We'll see y'all next week or next month for Pier Fishing.